wisdom. Empowerment. Urban Family Talk.
It's my pleasure to welcome good friend and expert strategist. He's a senior VP of strategic operations for the Security Studies Group, national security and political warfare consultant, and a fellow at the Claremont Institute. David, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Stacey. It's great to be with you. I can't wait to get my cup. I want a cup.
Oh, you want a cup too? Have you seen the
Yeah.
beauty of the cup? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful cup.
I haven't seen it, but it sounds so good.
Well, I'm going to have to send you a picture. If you like it, then we'll have to make arrangements for you to also have a cup.
Sounds like a deal.
We actually gave them as kind of a gift for people who gave during the Share-a-thon, which is we biannually raise funds to fund the radio programs here. So I'm excited to talk to you because I need expert analysis. I need someone who understands what's going on to help me and the listeners wade through all of the indictments, all of the language, all of the threats, the Podesta Group threatening Tucker Carlson. I mean, there's so much going on. So the latest with Mueller and the indictments, where do we begin? What do we need to know?
Well, the first thing is read Andy McCarthy on all this stuff at National Review, because he's a guy who's a former federal prosecutor of great note, and who's a good friend and a real straight shooter, and he's got really nothing invested in this from a partisan perspective. So he's somebody that I trust a lot, and his analysis and the analysis of several others over there carry a lot of weight. So what he's been saying, and I think it's true, is that so far it seems like a big nothing burger, because ordinarily, Andy was saying from his experience as a prosecutor, you want to lead with sort of the big thing. You want to lead with a big bang and be able to sort of aggressively prosecute your case from there on out. With these particular indictments on Manafort and Papadopoulos, it's obvious that what's happening is it all comes back to kind of the same original fact of this case, which is that there's no crime. It's people are talking about collusion, but collusion is not a criminal activity, and they have yet to show any evidence of any criminal activity in this case. And it's hard to see this as anything but a completely political prosecution here, with the assistance of Mueller, who was Jim Comey's very good friend.
So let's talk about that for a second. I wanted to believe that Mueller could lead this process in nonpartisan fashion, only bowing down to the law, and every other aspect being very upright and honorable. And that has been the Democrats' mantra from day one. He has bipartisan support. Everyone trusts him. He isn't a partisan. Yet this investigation is still going on, number one. And number two, this indictment, I did read Andrew McCarthy. In fact, we went over a little bit of one of the articles that he's written, the one that came out this morning, where he calls it a nothing burger. I read that one with interest, and then I shared some of it on the show last hour. And I was just kind of thinking, well, if it's overcharged and it's all about things that happened well before Manafort ever shook hands with Donald Trump, why is this still going on under the guise of the Russia collusion story?
Well, I think it's a political operation more than anything else. There are so many issues that kind of get pulled into this that, frankly, the Democrats aren't that keen in looking into. For example, FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and FARA has a long history. It started around 50 years ago when when people wanted to go after. Frankly, they wanted to go after pro-Israel elements in the United States, and they wanted to go after American Jews that they thought were doing the bidding of Israel. And so they passed FARA, and FARA basically never gets prosecuted. And what that means is, if you take money from somewhere else, or you're quote unquote advancing the interests of a foreign power, then you have to register in an office and you have to declare, hey, I was a lobbyist for, for France or the UK or Israel or Saudi Arabia or whatever. So this is really what they're getting Paul Manafort on, and what it does is it exposes kind of the underbelly of the Beltway. I mean, we know that there is so much money here in D.C., and how do people make so much money in D.C.? Well, they trade on their political power and their political connections, and it's not merely big corporations that want something from U.S. government policy. Oftentimes, and actually probably more often than not, it's a foreign government that wants something. Now, you've got so many people in D.C. who willingly or unwillingly are working for foreign governments or foreign interests, and pushing particular policies. Some are being paid, some are not being paid, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets into this murky world. The question of influence peddling does, and the Democrats are certainly not prepared to go there honestly, because they're some of the worst offenders.
So I read also this morning that when in relation to FARA, usually it's not a prosecution at all. They just, someone will become aware that you're doing some work for a foreign entity, and they'll say, are you aware that you need to disclose? And so here's a form. Would you go ahead and disclose for all of the years that are appropriate? But the statute of limitations only goes back for 5 years, so you need to maybe backdate some of your declarations. Go ahead and make that happen. And it's really just, kind of a nasty letter letting you know you need to make something happen, and that's it. In this case, it's being treated as a crime against the United States of America. What?
Right. Yeah, that's the kind of BS heading that Mueller or one of his attorneys wrote up in the Manafort indictment, and it's utterly misleading. And the truth of the matter is, I helped put together a FARA case against CAIR, the Council of American Islamic Relations, the Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood linked group in D.C.
Yeah.
And there's that case is pretty airtight, but there was no appetite at that time during the Obama administration to go after them based on FARA. And really what it comes down to, honestly, is that FARA is one of these things that's on the books that if you run afoul of the people that would use it offensively to go after you, they will use it to go offensively after you. But they will just, as often as not, let you just operate with backdating a form. So it's one of these things that exists, primarily in practice as a way for Democrats to go after their opposition. And for that reason,
so should we get rid of it?
Have to take a look at the law.
Okay, because see, this is the kind of thing that isn't supposed to exist in a country like ours. It sounds like some banana republic garbage that you're saying. So if the Obama administration is going on and someone realizes that someone who's a Republican or Republican consultant or someone who works with Republicans the majority of the time has not disclosed or declared that they're doing work on behalf of a foreign entity, then that person should be prosecuted. But someone like CAIR, who is affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, unindicted co-conspirators, all that good jazz, then those kinds of people, they're let to go because really this is just not that big of a deal. Just backdate it and go on about your business. And then if the Republicans were to behave in the same way, it would be called, corruption, yada, yada, yada. So why do we even still have it? Why not just eliminate it? Because so if Paul Manafort's done something wrong, I want him to be prosecuted, but I don't want him to be prosecuted just because he worked with the Republicans at some point.
Right. Yeah. No, I've got no, I'm certainly not a special pleader for, Manafort. I mean, Manafort is one of one of the sort of classic shady lobbyists in D.C. Who will who never found a corrupt regime that he wouldn't support for money. But to say that he's the only guy out there who's doing this, I mean, we know that's not true because even the leaks are looking at the Podesta Group, which specialized in this in this thing, from the Democrat end. I mean, unfortunately, we talk about corruption in D.C. with respect to this and with respect to lobbying for foreign powers and lobbying for foreign interests, but I don't think there's really a way to get around it. I don't think it's realistic to assume that this is going to stop because, after all, I mean, this is Rome. Washington D.C. is Rome, and in the sense that it's the most powerful city and the most powerful country on earth, and you've got everybody who is jockeying for their own interests here, and I'm just not. It's just one of the things that we may have to live with while we're more aware of the effects of this thing. So it's a complicated issue, but going back to the original point, I think it's completely overcharged, as they say.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the rumblings on the shows this morning and last night were that the whole point of this exercise is to publicly charge and tar and feather Paul Manafort in order to get him to kind of sing like a bird against President Trump. So if there were anything, and I know you're not a part of the investigation, you don't know for sure, but you're an expert in this type of thing. If there were something dastardly to find out about Donald Trump, the person, businessman, reality TV show host, or Donald Trump, the candidate, or now Donald Trump, the president, they've FISA tapped him, they've wiretapped Trump Tower, they've tapped his servers, they've read his emails, they've listened to his calls, they've looked at the metadata, they've apparently looked at some of his financial dealings. If there was anything to find, would they not have uncovered it by now?
I think they would have. I think certainly they would have, and they would have leaked something. But I mean, I think to get a picture of this, you kind of have to go back to last year around, maybe not even around this time, but last year around early summer, and around that time there were a few people who could plausibly claim to be associated with the campaign, who were shady, starting with Manafort, and who did have shady Russian connections on one hand, and then on the other hand, you had Donald Trump himself, who had no problem attacking, anybody on one hand, and on the other hand, he seemed to reserve a good amount of respect for Putin. So it seemed a little more reasonable then to suspect that maybe he had some shady ties with the Russians. As a businessman, and as someone who has had dealings in the international finance world, it wouldn't come as a surprise if he had shady dealings with Russians over the course of his life. But it ended up actually being nothing. Now this special prosecutor was really put together for one thing, which is to find out, did the Trump campaign coordinate with Russians to in one way or another materially assist in winning the election. Now, on that question, I think it's really clear by this point that the answer to that is no. Now, there, the idea then of looking into.
We're up against the break, David. We've got to leave it there. But I'm so grateful that you had time to come on today, and we hope to talk to you again soon. We'll be right back with more.
Truth. We're about wisdom. We're about empowerment. Urban Family Talk.